some of our colleagues will be watching the chat box and answering the questions in the chat, or we will take up those questions as part and parcel of the discussion. If that question will be answered in the coming slides, we will let you know that the questions will be answered. And please be on mute. We are trying to record this session, for us to have a good audio quality and an experience for all the video viewers. We request all of you to go on mute, except the speakers, though. That goes without saying. Ravikant sir, you can get started, and thank you for being here. Jils, Avi, myself, we can get started.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hari, for that introduction. So firstly, let me take this opportunity to actually thank the whole community of the open source, starting with the, the the people who have contributed, starting from Jails, and people who are leading it at a leadership level, Avinash, and people who are actually running it on field like Hari Kiran, his team, and all the other people who have been participating with open source. Open source has evolved over the last 2 to 3 decades, and this webinar here is basically one way we are trying to again do that so that others can also make use of this. So on that note, let me first introduce myself. I am Ravi Kiran. Presently, I am posted as MeeSeva in the state of Telangana in India. MeeSeva, to give you a quick background, Hari, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, to give you a quick background of what exactly is MeeSeva. MeeSeva is a government's flagship e-governance platform, which was started way back in '91 and present close to 500 plus citizen services. Both G2C and in a few about G2B services have been onboarded. So you could say almost every service which a citizen wants, right from the state where a baby is born, from the birth certificate, school certificate, get your caste certificate, you will have to pay all your utility bills, your electricity bill, your water bill, and if you have a property, you can pay your property taxes. If you have any traffic tickets or challans, you can pay all of those. Your mobile bills, all those can be applied through this single portal. In addition to this, of course, there are many other services also. I will not go through the details. And these are offered in more than 2 or 3 modes. The most prominent would be the physical centers. We have close to 5,000 physical centers. And we have a mobile app. We have governance through WhatsApp also. And all integrated together, which come to a total volume of close to 80,000 to sometimes hitting even 1.2, 1.3 lakh transactions per day. In fact, as recent as last week, there was a service where students who are appearing for their 10th standard, they could download their hall tickets, they could download their exam results. And as you know, exam results are something the moment within the matter of next 5 minutes, everybody would download their um, results or hall tickets. So we saw close to 30 to 40,000 students downloading their hall tickets in the first 5 minutes itself through this platform. So that is the volume we are looking at. And obviously, any kind of downtime or anything which happens critically affects all the citizens. So that is why it has become very critical. Next slide, please. Hari, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So, with this as the background, what was the decision we needed to take? Like I mentioned, our organization is close to 25, 30 years old, and it had been on the Oracle servers for a very, very long time, and their licenses were expired. And we had to decide what to do next, because Oracle and the other service providers had very clearly told that the license being expired, there would be no support given. So you please go ahead and renew the license, which is when we realize the cost which we will be incurring if we go with any of these paid license, be it Oracle or MS SQL or any of these, would be so high that it would actually, mm, uh, in a way, make economically not so much sense. That is when we realized and decided that we should go with an open source software as the database which is behind this. And hence we started exploring. When we got in touch with all the stakeholders, we discussed and we finalized that PostgreSQL is the best open source software with which we'll have to go, which can easily handle the kind of volumes we are looking at, and maybe volumes even later also which would be coming up. So the annual support and the perpetual cost of the Oracle is already mentioned here, versus the cost which we actually had to pay when we did a simple one-time migration was, I would say, not even, I would say, 1 or 2% of the total cost, without any kind of a maintenance required, other than just 1 or 2 people who would support this whole system, who are the database managers. Next slide, please. So making this migration success, of course, PostgreSQL, the basic backbone behind this, and I would not uh, be able to make justice to this whole thing without Aura to PG, the tool which helped in managing the whole process, which was done by the open source team led by Hari and others. And is our own technology partners who have been working day in and day out on this. Next slide, please. And to just give you about what exactly we were able to do, this whole migration, in fact, although the numbers are very clear here, I would like to mention here that the Road Transport Authority, which is dealing with all the licenses of vehicles and the registration of vehicles and payment of the tax for the vehicles, everything runs on MeeSeva. So the volume there itself is so high that because there are so many people every day who do their registration, their payments, and all that, that is when we were a bit worried would actually be able to do it in a time without impacting these services. But thankfully, to the solid support we got and the huge amount of background with which it was started, we were able to complete it within a time with, I would say, almost zero impact on the services uh, delivery, as well as in terms of the loss of data. So yeah, broadly, this is what I would like to add. Now I would request Hari to take over, and maybe he could explain much more details on the technicalities. And once
Sure.
again, let me thank Gillis and Avinash and everybody else. Thank you so much. Over to you, Hari.
Sure. Thank you. I just go back and just touch upon this whole platform context, and then I'll go to Jills and Avi for their introduction. So, in one word, if I have to, in one phrase, if I have to explain, what MeeSeva for us is, this is a zero tolerance for failure platform, right? That's the challenge that we were looking at. That's the challenge that we had on our hands. But yeah, I'd go ahead and hand it over to Avi for quickly introducing himself, and then to Jills as to what they do and how they contributed to this.
Thank you, Hari, and thank you everyone for joining. And also, one of the facts that needs to be appreciated in this case before I start my introduction is basically, the decision, especially in such scenarios, it is more than the execution. The decision at the executive level or the top level is extremely important, because this is not a decision that can really be that promising in the government sector in general, right? So,
Exactly.
and in order to go ahead and take that decision and also believe in such an execution is something extremely important. And I sincerely appreciate Ravi Kiran Garu and the entire team, who has really taken this decision and, and executed it at the end through the partners like Open Source TV and also leveraging Oracle. So I'm Avinash Valarapu. I am the co-founder of this company called Hexacluster, who is a Postgres contributor. So myself and Jill run Hexacluster. And at the same time, we have been contributing a lot towards open source in the form of be it Oracle PG or more than 50 popular Postgres extensions just to support Oracle compatibility as well as SQL Server compatibility and performance and observability in a lot of areas. So I am originally from Hyderabad. I live in Canada, Toronto now. And I would let Jill do his introduction. So yeah.
Hello everyone, yes, I'm Gilles Darold. I'm a PostgreSQL contributor and open source developer for a long time. I'm the author of Rat2PG and tons of open source tools around Postgres. I want to thank Rarikiam again because it's really gratifying for my work to have someone who brought such feedbacks on the Rat2PG. So thank you very much, Rarikiam. Much appreciated. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Avi and Jill, for the introduction. So slightly touching up on the Oracle landscape per se, right now, here's where we started, right now. There is the Oracle 11G Enterprise Edition procured by the IT Electronics and Computer Department, right? There are 3 separate instances of Oracle, which means that there were 3 separate licenses that were required, right? One was taking care of the analytics, one was taking care of the payment gateway, and one was taking care of the whole citizen services portal per se, right? The cost was the absolute stark, I would say, one of the important drivers for the whole migration process, right? And this was not sustainable, right? Both from an economical standpoint and from the alignment of Telangana government's direction towards open source adoption. Avi, very eloquently pointed out, the decision making was very, very highly appreciated, right? To go to open source, to look at open source software, and then look at Postgres as a database. We really appreciate that. And on the business case, right now, so when we wrote this business case ourselves, 100% license fee elimination was our main important goal, I would say, and a lower total cost of ownership and the vendor independence. For some people, if we go ahead and dissect the TCO and the vendor independence and the alignment towards the national and state open source policies, this is a huge milestone. The question was whether to migrate or not. It was how to do it. And when we looked at some of the solutions, Upadi has done a bit of work. And when we stepped in with our Postgres first team, we looked at it and we just asked a few questions, right? Are you there in the decision-making process, right? What's the open source direction? And MeeSeva team, both Commissioner Sir and then the senior consultant Raja Raghav, everybody said, yes, we are up for that challenge, and this is a platform that we have chosen to demonstrate it, right? So more of the migration success, and then we will look at some of the architecture evolution also here, right? Before going there, I would look at the database landscape that we have got, right? You could see that the scope was looking at 3 database instances of Oracle, and then the ideal decision-making process would be to, hey, I will just bag one Oracle instance and then create a database on Postgres instance, and then the other 2 databases would also be created in one Postgres instance, or creation of 2 or 3 instances. So if you look at the landscape, right, it's a fairly complex system that we have got, right? The platform where most of the citizens were depending. This was definitely a multi-team effort, and we looked at two very important parts here. What is the lift and shift that we will be able to do by using Oracle PG? Avi will be talking about that Oracle PG features and some of the nuances that we have used. And the second piece was, how do we make sure the entire experience of all the 5,000 plus services that are there, 5,000 plus touch points that the MeeSeva would have? How do we make sure the experience and the customer experience is as as less disruptive as possible? Right now, with all the programmatical stuff in place, right now we had seen these three architectures. So we lifted and shifted the Oracle and said, created these three separate PostgreSQL instances, and we had to introduce foreign data wrappers into the whole solution. Now, foreign data wrappers, as most of us know, they are not the most performant extensions available in Postgres ecosystem. And when we looked at some of the SQL queries that are part and parcel of MeeSeva, they were interacting with each other, on a very regular basis. If I take an example of one transaction, I go to a MeeSeva center and say, hey, I would like to download my birth certificate. Not that it is any important now, something which happened 39 years ago. So when we looked at it, the whole transaction was going to the dashboard, and then there is a payment gateway that is in between, and the analytics that needs to be fed by the whole system. So the first option of going with three different database instances was not going to help us. So we equally rejected that option. And then a second, we go ahead and say, hey, how about we special, we create and deploy, three clusters and then two nodes each. From a server footprint standpoint, I know MeeSeva works closely with the state data center, and from a server farm standpoint or the server footprint that we had to have, so that was quite on the larger side. So we wanted to have a lean and clean system. So we did a lot of analytics of how much of transactions the system is processing. Is there a possibility that we can have all of the database, the payment, the gateway, and the analytics, everything in one Postgres database, and then have this schema segregation? So that is the final database model and the server farm that we looked at. And like Ravikiran sir mentioned, there were some good transaction numbers, right? 1,20,000 transactions on a day, 1,45,000 transactions on a day. That is a pretty decent number for us to go look at. And Postgres standing tall and say, hey, this is good, right? All these transactions are getting persisted in the database, right? Now, with that in mind and the database landscape that we have had, you could have a good 10,000 feet overview of how much of volume of data we were looking at, and what is the amount of engineering that needed to be in place, and how well Oracle PG orchestrated the whole migration per se, right? So there were a few tools that were available, tools that were looked on by Upadi team. And then once we looked at the whole systems, and then we looked at a schema assessment, using the Oracle PG. And we said, hey, this is a very good candidate where we will be able to leverage Oracle PG and go to a greater distance of migrating the entire stuff, right? Now, this is the actual Oracle PG thing. I would like to call up on Avi to talk about some of the automation that Oracle PG has. And Avi and Giles, you have been working a lot in this migration ecosystem, right? You guys are the pioneers of this migration ecosystem. Over and above Oracle PG, right? What is it some of our audience that are part of this webinar can take away? Please help us out, Avi.
Thank you, Hari. Yes. So, firstly, we all, like Ravi Kirangar as well as Hari mentioned, we all need to be appreciating the fact that Jill is one of the reasons behind, all of these transformations. Jill originally created Oracle PG in 2001, and since then until today, right? I think Oracle PG is still popular, and Google as well as Microsoft Azure, when they originally started their database migration services, they build their entire migration service on top of Oracle PG, and
Right.
and this is one of the interesting things, right? However, while this is really great at at a high level, right? So there are certain things that we still need to consider. That Oracle PG is one of the tools that can help us with the assessment, like you mentioned, where you would be able to understand which database would be the ideal candidate to start with, right? Especially in this cost optimization initiative. And also at the same time, there are certain complex Oracle constructs, which is with respect to the Oracle procedural language, which is PL SQL. And additionally, there is also Oracle proprietary SQL syntax, which is different from the ANSI compliant SQL, right? Because Postgres, like databases, are 100% ANSI compliant. So when you have certain Oracle constructs that are proprietary to Oracle, we'll also have to convert them, transpile them, right, to Postgres constructs. So that involves both application changes as well as the database level changes. So this is what Oracle PG has tackled up to a great extent, right? However, one of the things that Jill, as well as all of us, have always believed at Hexacluster, as well as in the community also, is that it is important to have a solution which can actually do the true transpilation. So the process of transpilation is nothing but there are, in a high level of abstraction, I can put it as 3 core steps involved, right? Like parsing, transformation, and generating the code to code in the target supported syntax, right? So there will be a lexical analysis that is done on the source side, where the source code, the PL SQL function or procedure, is broken down into tokens, and which is basically identifiers and everything else, and then that is translated or transformed into an abstract syntax tree, and from there the target code is generated. So this was one of the views that Jill always had for the past 25 plus years, and this is something that we were glad to also achieve with Oracle PG++, which is basically Hexarocket 2. But ultimately, one of the things that I can always say is more than 70% of the schema conversion can be handled effectively well through Oracle PG. And because of certain limitations with respect to transpilation and Oracle constructs, it does involve a true amount of application code changes. And while some of it is something that we are able to handle through our commercial solution, I would still say that Oracle PG does it pretty well. So you start with an assessment using Oracle PG, you reach to a certain stage of schema conversion through Oracle PG, you'll be able to perform data movement from your Oracle to Postgres using Oracle PG, which would be an offline data migration. And then ultimately, you would be able to give the database for testing to the application team, while everything else is something that you are still converting, the non-converted PL SQL objects. So there is some manual effort which is definitely involved, and over a period of time, it is only getting reduced. So in the coming slides, at the right point, we'll also be discussing about the role of AI, as well as how it can be doing even better, right? Or maybe reducing the time. Yeah. So Jill, do you have anything to say about the capabilities of Ora2PG, especially most of the times people want to use Ora2PG, but is it always just Ora2PG, or do you think that it's also some amount of effort which is on top of Ora2PG, right? So you're on mute, but
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, some of the things that must be implemented over RPG. RPG is on the basis, and if you don't need, if you have a cutover window to regulate, it's okay. But yeah, if you don't have such time to migrate, and you want to have rollback, or be able to go back to Oracle because your migration in production was failing. So this is something that can be asked too. But this is not part of our RPG. It could be, but it's a long effort, and there is tools that can be used for that. So I don't put any effort on this. But yeah, I concentrate on migrating almost any Oracle database with Ora2PG, provides that yeah, you can have a QT window to migrate. This is not problematic. And also, you have to test everything before going to production to not use rollbacks. This is what I advise every time. So, or use something like Exalocket to be able to roll back CDC or everything. But and there is also sometimes we can find some Oracle models that DBMS models that does not exist for Postgres. So when we encounter some of this model, we can write extension for Postgres to have the same behavior. So
Right.
this is what we are doing constantly.
Great. Thank you, Giles, and thank you, Avi. Avi, we will definitely come back to your point of, hey, Ora2PG is great, but how do we bring the AI component into the picture? Our audience would be super psyched to know about that, in the earlier, in the coming slides. But this is where I would call most of our technical folks, right? The DevOps engineers, the DBAs, the database engineers, and the developers, right? This is the slide, which is a very, very honest breakdown of, on the left-hand side, you will see everything that, Ora2PG just automates, right? Without any bit of a sweat, right? Whether it is schema conversion, whether it is, PLPG SQL, translation, the three important pivots that Avi mentioned about: parsing, tokenizing, and the translation. All of that is done by the Ora2PG, right? On the right is the more environment specific, right? Everything that requires that human touch, right? You would require that human intervention, right? There were 30 plus functions which were written in Oracle using a lot of their DBMS packages. And these procedures were rewritten from scratch. And there was one custom Python validation utilities that we had built, which complemented the Ora2PG. And Ora2PG also has a lot of constructs, a lot of utilities where you can do the validation. But it was some things that were very specific to MeeSeva environment, where we went ahead and say, hey, let's just go ahead and have a Python utility, which does the validation and makes sure the whole of it from a reporting standpoint, right? When we are looking at how do we say the databases are even, right? The rows that are between the Oracle tables and the Postgres tables are equal, right? From a checkpoint, I mean, checksum standpoint, some of the validations. And with some of those Python utilities, right, we were able to look at a lot of integration testing, right? So there were 85 plus services that needed integration testing. And there was a category 1 bug that we were able to identify via some of these validation utilities, right? Now, the way I look at the Oracle PG, right, that should be our first step whenever we are thinking about the Oracle to Postgres migration, right? Now, if you look at, with all the stuff that we had discussed, the architecture evolution that we discussed about, how we got from 3 different clusters to a few clusters and one single cluster, one database, and then consolidation in the schema made a lot of sense with the database landscape that are there in place, right? If there are any questions, feel free to ping us on the chat. We will go ahead and stop and try setting up some of this. Right now, looking at the business case for migration, right? You can see that the business case is a very strong one, right? We are looking at 100% of Oracle license fee elimination, right? Lower TCO, and then a long-term maintainability plan for it, right? So MeeSeva is going to be catering to more and more data sets, right? More and more volume of data that is going to be coming through, right? And the whole foundational building block is the government's open source push that we have had, right? That's one thing that keeps a lot of our success, a lot of the whole programs thing that was there in place. Now, I would like to have Avi talk about this slide a bit, right? What would you do? I mean, you've been doing developing Oracle PG and the superlative side of Hexarocket, right? How would you handle this migration approach, Avi? Right now, help us paint a picture and go about.
Definitely, Hari. I think the one that you have that you're presenting currently, where you have a stage of dual writes, where the application is technically writing to both Oracle as well as Postgres, right?
Right.
I would say that is one of the strategies that are definitely approached by a lot of enterprises, right? At the same time, in addition to this proven strategy, there is also another strategy, which is basically doing a live replication of data from Oracle to Postgres before the cutover of the application from Oracle to Postgres. So this live replication is technically based on the transaction logs. So the Oracle redo logs or the binary redo logs are parsed and continuously streamed to Postgres, which also involves transformations, data type transformations between Oracle to Postgres, and that has to happen in between. So in order to do that, there are some tools. Of course, we do have, like Jill mentioned, Oracle PG cannot do the continuous streaming, but we have the commercial offering of it, which is Hexarocket, which has got that replication capability. But so the second strategy I would say is building that replication capability. And once you cut over your application from Oracle to Postgres, you would be able to also do a reverse replication from Postgres to Oracle. So during that cutover, you might see a 2-second blip, right? It's basically the speed at which you are performing the cutover and the speed at which you see a real-time replication, or the performance of the real-time replication between Oracle and Postgres, which is technically faster now with Hexarocket, but this is the second strategy.
Thank you, Avi. So the migration approach that we did at the MeeSeva was dual, right? Largely the credit goes to our development partner Upadi, who had this dual write, as part of the JDBC ecosystem itself, right? And the best part that we had with the dual write, when we went on, I mean, we came on board, right? We made sure that the dual write is service by service configurable. If I have to dissect that for us, we will be in a position to go to one specific service, right? There were 85 plus services that were there as part of MeeSeva. For a specific service, we can go ahead and say, hey, I do not want to write to both Oracle and Postgres at a single point of time, right? That is a configurable aspect that we had. And that was by far one of the solutions that helped us in a lot of integration testing. And some of the government agencies that we were working with, some with respect to Upadi, which takes care of a lot of RTA systems. And then there were Dharani, a lot of land records systems that were upstreaming the data to MeeSeva. In most cases, we were not able to do an apples to apples testing. Hey, what could happen once some of these services go live on April 4th, which was the designated go live date, right? What would happen? How much of data burst would we see, right? How much of transactions would we see, right? We will be in a position to make sure both Oracle and Postgres can persist those writes in parallel or not, right? Because we had that option of doing service by service configurable aspects, that help us a lot in the stress testing of the 2x production load, right? So because we did not have the staging endpoints, we pumped in a lot of data from some of these endpoints, and we were able to go ahead and say, hey, there are 1 lakh transactions coming into the system, right? Let's go ahead and do a 2x production load, right? That is a decent way of stress testing the environment, stress testing the dual writes that are going to be doing, right? And more critically, we tested the integration of production, the staging, the 5 services at a time, pointed to Postgres with dual write. That gave us a good hard evidence that persisting between the two systems, two database engines were all working fine, right? And then there were a lot of issues that we have had. I don't know, we had some issues with the services where there was a lot of batch transactions happening, right? Issues were resolved in batch, right? Issues were looked upon by how close we are going to the cutover window, and then how we are looking at a lot of changes that were happening. And with all of these, there were new change requests coming to these 85 plus services that were being deployed at MeeSeva. By the time the cutover window opened, all 86 services had already been validated against real endpoints. So that was the most important dual write mechanism, or the dual write strategy that we had taken. And then double clicking on what Avi's point, right? Having a CDC system in place. When I had captured that in our future slides. So having CDC as part of the whole ball game is an utmost important piece. So you are persisting all the transactions on the Oracle, and then use the Oracle's infrastructure in place, right? The redo logs that are there. You will use all the redo logs and broadcast the data that is going from the redo logs to the PostgreSQL data, right? That is another approach that you can take a look at if there is a possibility that you can use Hexarocket in your migrations. I see there are a few questions. Avi, I'm sure you are keeping a track of those questions, and if we can answer them, feel free to stop me, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think a couple of questions, couple of interesting questions were about.
Go ahead, please.
I think I will take probably some of the questions where I think Sally has an interesting question about Postgres extensions that helped you in this migration, Hari. While you need to answer that, maybe I would
Right.
also say that there are quite a good number of extensions that emulate, or rather provide similar syntax as Oracle in Postgres. So there are some of these extensions like pgdbms job, pgdbms erlog, and pgtt for global temporary table simulation in Postgres. So there are definitely a number of extensions depending on your use case. But I think
Yeah.
in this specific project, maybe Hari, you might want to answer.
ORFC was the only extension that we had to use, Sally, right? That gave some of these functions that were part and parcel of the schema. That is the only extension that we used. But over and above that, once the migration was, the whole strategy was sorted out, we had to take a look at a lot of the performance. Now, how do we optimize some of the performance on the Postgres side? Oracle being Oracle, and then Postgres looking at it, right? There were some extensions like PG Badger, again another beautiful tool that Gilles had written and gave us to the Postgres community. So that gave us a lot of insights from the Postgres log files. And we used pgstat statements. We used some of the Python-based forensic data retrieval things, right? The data that we collect and again parse it and then build some of the reports against them. So these are some of the extensions that we used. Again, from a migration standpoint, ORFC was the only one that we had used to answer your questions, really. Do we have any other questions, Avi?
Yeah, I think some questions were related to the storage type that was used for Postgres. I'm pretty sure that you would have gone with an ext4 file system and probably SSDs, or maybe so if you want to answer that. And I think the Oracle and Postgres database versions, right? So I think
Right.
Yeah.
So this is that we could talk about that a bit. So we were on Oracle 11G Enterprise Edition, and we went from Oracle 11G to Postgres 17.9. 17.9 being the latest and greatest patch set, or the minor version that was available. The operating system was Ubuntu. Be it the Telangana government or some of the Indian government agencies, right? They look at Rocky Linux, they look at Ubuntu, and some of the open source Linux systems a lot. And there is a lot of RHEL server farm too, but a large contingent of the operating systems being used in some of our systems is Ubuntu. And we looked at the latest Ubuntu 24.04 LTS as our operating system, right? And now double clicking on a bit of high availability aspects here. Avi, should we go ahead and look at the high availability? Do we have any questions that we can answer our folks?
Yeah, I think not any questions related to that, but I think yeah, Gilles has answered some of the questions, so I think we can proceed. So related to the high availability architecture as well, like you pointed out, right? So it's also now very important to achieve several lines of availability, which is a fancy key term used in the infra world, right? So how do we achieve the several lines of availability? Because that is something probably Ravi, Kirana, and the entire leadership would have put forward as a question. Now we are transitioning from Oracle to Postgres. How do we ensure that it's highly available? I think this is kind of an architecture where your application is able to seamlessly or transparently fail over from the primary data center to a DR data center in the event of disasters, right? So it could be infra level disasters, it could be power outages, it could be any reason due to which you would want a layer which is able to route the, so HA proxy is one of the open source TCP/IP packet routers. So it's a load balancer, as well as it has got its own health checks that it can rely on top of Petroni-like high availability templates available for Postgres, which
Correct.
is exposing certain REST APIs to tell what is a primary and standby. So this is a neat architecture. And of course, this can be extended depending on the use case, as well as your application architecture. But this is some kind of a blueprint that can be always followed. Yeah.
Thank you, Avi. So when it came to MeeSeva, MeeSeva has to work with ITC department. MeeSeva has to work with state data centers. The server farms that we have had, the hardware resources that the MeeSeva team has helped us, Rajaragaru, to be specific, right? Their focus was tell us what is the hardware specifications that you would need, and then justify how much of transaction volumes that we will be dealing with, right? When we are powering with beefy hardware and beefy computing power, right? It has to be justified with how much of transaction volume are we doing, right? Here's the production architecture that we have today, right? All of the 85 plus services are talking to the primary node, and we have one synchronous replica because of the criticality of data. We had to have one sync replica in place. Both the systems, right? Both primary node and the sync replica are in a single rack, and that gives us zero data loss on any failover scenarios, right? And then we also have an asynchronous replica, right? Feeding the DR via the cascading replica. And the connection concentration layer, Upadhi had the connection pooling mechanism, which works pretty tightly with the HA proxy, and we had a keep ID for the VIP failover. And there was at a point of time when we were going live, we had a week times left with us, and we went with the chaos testing of the whole hardware systems in place, right? So there were 5 replication scenarios, right? 5 failure scenarios that we had in place, right? Failure scenarios. Hey, what happens if the primary goes down? What happens when the synchronous replica is not available for some reason? And then the DR goes down, or the walls that are being generated are not being transported between the primary and so these are some of the tests that we had, and then we automated some of this chaos testing and did all of them. And Patroni being a pretty strong cluster management software, right? We could showcase the DR drill. We could look at all of those 5 testings that we have done, test cases that we have done, and all of these test cases have passed. Again, we being the auditors of the whole system per se, we were doing a very non-biased way of testing or breaking the cluster to not have any of these issues in the future, right? Any questions on the high availability part or some of the components that we have used? We would love to touch upon them now, or at the end of the presentation.
Hari, I can see one question from Lokesh.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to
I think,
quickly take.
Lokesh has a question about the data validation techniques that were used, so as well as the challenges faced. So maybe I can take this.
Sure, please go ahead, Ravi.
Right. So technically, so if you're using Aura2PG, by the way, Aura2PG also has this offline data validation capability, right? Where you're able to validate the data between the source and the target. But especially when you're performing offline data validation, you should also account the time that it would take, because it is also your downtime that could be involved in it, right? So this is where applications also do certain type of data validation through the applications, right? So there'll be test engineers as well as or QA team who would be ensuring that they do some random validations too, and certain business rules validation. And ultimately, talking about CLOB, character large object, and binary large object, where you are able to store large text files, let's say, or documents in a CLOB, or it could be images or PDFs or pictures or reports, anything that are need to be stored. You might want to use BLOB data type in Oracle, and that can also be effectively migrated well using Ora to PG as well as Hexarocket. But technically, uh, this capability of migrating these data types are natively supported within Ora to PG. Additionally, there'll be one other challenge, because you talked about challenge. One of the biggest challenges when you have, let's say, a kind of a document. Let's assume that somebody is doing some kind of a registration which involved uploading a document or a PDF which is beyond 1 GB of size. Assume that there is some kind of an upload that did happen, right? In such a case, right, you do have certain limitation within Postgres. Postgres, true alternative for a binary large object is by tier data type. Need to choose another large object data type that can effectively support even terabytes of binary large objects, such as could be videos, could be some, because it is sometimes possible to use databases for developers innovation, right? So developers do innovate in a variety of ways, especially in the legacy system. So you might also want to upload a video to binary large object because Oracle supports that. Postgres does support it, but you need to have an alternate data type. And the way you migrate or move data is again slightly different. So especially when you have more than 1 gig of binary large object, you need to start from design and redesign your application to rather move that to a file system. So these are some of the strategies that you might need to implement. And Hari is actually going ahead and sharing some more challenges. Go ahead, Hari. You're on mute.
A bit more on the validation question that Lokesh has asked. Oracle PG does have a lot of validation techniques available as part and parcel of the suite itself, the tools suite itself. Whenever you require any validation, any additional validations that you need to have, you could write it in your own language. I know you could be in a native SQL. What we did at MeeSeva as part of this migration is to build a lot of Python-based small utilities, right? That can be used by the developer team, that could be used by some of our DevOps teams, some of our business teams, right? What they did is, there were a very simple set of table definitions that were there between Oracle and Postgres. Some of them were imported for a bunch of reports that run at a scheduled time. So we wanted to generate those reports with a single click button. That was one requirement. And more of these were potentially the business users that wanted to see, hey, do I have the 1,000 records that are available in Oracle versus the 1,000 records that are available in Postgres? So from an automation standpoint and from giving the business users a little more insights into some of the reporting data, we had incorporated a lot of Python-based tools, right? Now, coming back to the challenges, I think this is that one slide where we could not gather all of the multiple iterations of challenges that we have had, but this is that one slide where most of our DBA colleagues and the developers in the audience take a photograph and say, hey, these are the things that went wrong, right? And very, very early in the project, right, the application team Upadi had chosen Navicat, again, another tool which does migration per se, to migrate the schema objects without validating the data types in place. right? So Oracle's number, date, varchar, not copied without the conversion rules, right? And then we looked at the whole scenario. We looked at the whole migration strategy in place, right? We caught it at a very, very nascent stages and switched to Oracle PG and performed a complete assessment of the existing Oracle system, right? That's how the whole Oracle PG journey started with MeeSeva. And that assessment report then carried out with a POC of one Oracle instance, and then changing that Oracle instance to a Postgres database, right? So that's the whole navigate to the Oracle PG switch that we had to do, right? Secondly, the integration testing that we were now. Every service, right? Now, like I said, there were 85 plus services that were part and parcel of the MeeSeva's offering, and integration testing was done against some of the staging steps, right? They were giving us static responses, right? Not the actual endpoints that the departments use, right? External departments that MeeSeva sends out some of the API calls did not have any staging environments where we can play and then say, hey, we are sending you a batch of transactions as part of one service. Do we have a request response system in place, right? We did not have a lot of those external integrations available. And we pivoted to the dual write on productions, right? Now, when we had gone live with 5 services, right? Instead of using a lot of FTWs between the databases, the architectural evolution that we had seen from the multiple clusters to a single cluster that we have seen, right? That cross database queries were too slow. So we just solved that with a lot of schema consolidation that we just described, right? The fourth one, which was a really, really critical one, right? Now, there was a date format mismatch between the Oracle date and the Postgres timestamp. Avi pointed this out, right? Preparing that mapping sheet, preparing that data type mapping document at the very, very start of the project is very important, right? And it silently dropped. That bug that we had, silently dropped some of the rows in the table, and they were not landing on the Postgres. Right? Our custom Python validation utility again caught it in the pre-production stage itself. Right? If we hadn't built that utility, we wouldn't have caught that bug, and then we wouldn't have caught that row counts mismatch for that specific set of tables or the specific set of modules that are there in place, right? And fifth of it, we had a very, very strict SLAs given to us as the Postgres team, right? Once you migrate from the Oracle server farm to the Postgres, right, we had to make sure some of these poorly performing SQLs, right? Almost like 25%, 20% of the queries did not meet the SLA targets. And we were on a Postgres conf file that did not go through a lot of tuning mechanism. So, and then the Oracle and Postgres query planners, behave differently, and most of us know about this. So, we fixed every one of those SQL queries, through parameter tuning, through indexing, through introducing some of the experience that we have got, right? But budget for this, right? Now, this is a good amount of work when you go ahead and look at a migration project, right? And Avi, you have seen a lot of migration projects, right? Now, doing the migration is one chunk of work, right? And what is a typical migration overhead that you see from a performance standpoint? Hey, Avi, this was working fine in Oracle, right? Why is this not performing well in Postgres, right? So how do you typically see this, and how do you look at it from a global projects standpoint?
Yeah. So whenever any such heterogeneous database migrations are involved, like you raised the right question, right, Hari, like definitely there will be certain differences within performance, because when you consider Oracle Optimizer is one of the most advanced and well-developed and well-maintained optimizers in the world. So it has got also the capability to store plan baselines and force an execution plan, which technically is something that the developers, the kernel developers or the OS developers or database developers, generally, when you're into development, you would want to avoid a system that does that. But that is something that Oracle supports, which is fantastic for the databases technically, or the applications. So but at the same time, within Postgres, while you have some extensions that can emulate that, the plan that might have been working because it was enforced to some of those queries that can leverage that plan, because the same plan is not possible within Postgres, and it's a different database engine, and the optimizer approaches the query execution in a different way, there can be performance differences. But in any migration, and we see thousands and thousands of migrations getting executed, because all of those are handled with some amount of true effort from development perspective. So we might have to spend some amount of time on that. But technically, this is all resolvable. And one of the other interesting scenarios is that Oracle, right? If you look at the license terms of Oracle, Oracle does not allow you to publish the benchmarks or the results of your benchmark. So you cannot perform a benchmark on an Oracle database and publish that result. So that is why you never see anybody talking about, oh, things working great on Postgres after migrating from Oracle, right? An application is really faster after migrating to Oracle, right? But they do not want to tell that, right? They cannot. They cannot really publish those numbers. But you see a lot of silent migrations that are happening. So that is one of the interesting facts that is driving more and more people to migration. So it is never an unresolvable challenge. All of these performance challenges can definitely appear after migration, and those are all something that can be addressed. So, and this is why you see a lot of customers as well as enterprises out there migrating from Oracle to Postgres, right? So you might reach to the satisfactory stage undoubtedly. While I cannot just go ahead and tell any numbers in this case, but we see the real world examples out there, and one of them is MeeSeva that is being presented now, right? So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So from an outcomes standpoint, I know when we look at it, right, the results, the 85 plus critical services migrated, 100% the data integrity checksums validated, right? The very important piece, Ravikiran sir also mentioned, right? The zero data loss strategy that we had to follow, right? Somebody, who has passed out, yesterday, he was quoting this example, somebody who passed out his SSE, right? The oldest person living in Telangana should have his or her data to be retrieved out of the MeeSeva system at any point of time, right? So data loss, zero data loss, whatever the data retention that we are talking about, right? The data retention of some 35, 40 years of data that we have seen on the Postgres system, on the Oracle systems that MeeSeva have had, right? The zero data loss is absolutely that we never ever looked upon in the whole migration journey, right? As part of the whole migration, right? Whenever we look at, we made sure that the whole system is very, very closely monitored. So we also had a complete 72-hour hypercare with on-call database engineers and application systems folks were available, and the platform was stable after the 72-hour hypercare. We did not see any issues as part and parcel of that 72-hour hypercare. Now the system is in the day two support, like we call in normal world. It is in the day two support world, and yeah, so that's how the migration today. MeeSeva is fully on Postgres. We have transitioned to the day two support. Oracle decommissioning is underway, and we are documenting a migration runbook so other state governments can replicate this. Ravikaran sir and Rajarao sir have been, the advocates of this case study, and the whole blueprint is available, and we will be happy to answer any questions, right? Whether it is Avi on the Ora to PG side, there's some of the enhancements that are required, or from an operational standpoint, and architecting the whole migration standpoint, Postgres first, open source DB teams will be happy to handle any of those. And Amar had a question of, hey, would you cater to some changes, or would you pivot to something else and de-risk the whole migration process, right? One is to have a solid CDC in place to avoid that 12-hour of downtime that we had in place, right? The 12-hour of downtime is we had to shut down the traffic coming into the MeeSeva systems, and take the dump of the entire 1.7 to 1.8 terabytes of data from the Oracle, and then use Ora to PG in a controlled and a parallelized environment to do the entire data from Oracle to Postgres, and go about doing all the other activities like index creation, constraint validation, constraints creation, and so on and so forth, to make sure the entire Postgres schema is compliant, referential integrity compliant. From a business rules standpoint, it is compliant. And the second thing that we would have very early identified is the amount of test integration suite that we will have at our disposal. We looked at the MeeSeva, some of the services, and say, hey, we will be able to go hit some of these staging steps, right? We will be able to go ahead and do that request response testing. That wasn't available. It was an assumption that we had that we would be able to do the staging, the testing cycles on the stage environment, but we could not do that. That's one thing that I would definitely look at if I want to de-risk it, or a mitigation plan. And another important aspect I would look at is training the Oracle engineers on Postgres, at least at a very foundational building blocks way. Hey, what are all some of the changes that you would see on the Oracle systems versus the Postgres system, right? Making sure they are well aware of some of the nuances that are available in Postgres, some of the features that are available in Postgres. These are some pieces that I would definitely look at, and if given a chance, these are some of the things that we would definitely change. I hope that answers the question. If not, please let us know. Thank you, Amar, for the question. Abhi, I think we are coming to the end of this. What I would look at right now, for someone who has never used Ora to PG, right? Jills, you can also take a good hard stab at it, right? The question is, for someone who has never used Ora to PG, what's the very first step that they should take tomorrow, when they start the migration project?
Yeah, go ahead, Jill. Yeah.
Yeah. The first approach is to do a migration assessment. Yeah. You don't know if you don't know the time to be involved in the migration, and this is the start of the migration. If you need to see if you can migrate very easily in the database, or if it will takes let's say 1 year because you have 3,000 stock procedure inside, or yeah, things like that. But this is not something like real time. This is you will have windows working, but yeah, everything can be done shortly. It depends of how many stock procedure you have and how many what tool you use. Usually, AutoPG do the good job on stock procedures, but it depends on what you use inside these stock procedures. If you use a loft or connect by or something like that, you will see that in the migration assessment, and you will be able to know what efforts you have to do to migrate. But yeah, everything can be migrated. I have never seen a NOAA database that cannot be migrated to Postgres. But yeah, first start by an assessment and see what you have in your OAuth database, because most of the time some people know what they have in their OAuth database. And yeah, after that, takes a decision of the who should be involved, how much people should be involved in the migration, and go migrate. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jills. I think Jills has an important point that he was mentioning, right?
Indeed,
which is
yeah.
about performing assessments, right? It's if you're starting the migration tomorrow, begin with an assessment, and so you could leverage Oracle PG, or probably use DMAT, which is a database migration assessment tool that's again created by Jills and Hexacluster, which is again something that you can download as well for larger environments. But ultimately, when you start with an assessment, you would be able to understand what are those complexities, just like how, Hari, you mentioned your strategy on and your approach to this project, how you initiated this with an assessment, and then how you were able to figure out what would be the ideal database, or which is this one as one of the true databases that can actually be migrated, right, with some amount of effort. So I think that effort estimation needs to be planned, and at the same time, one of the things that everybody misses, it is natural to miss, and that is the ecosystem of the application and all the upstream and downstream dependencies that they have with that specific candidate database, right? So there will be a natural miss that can be possible, because there could be some applications that could probably run like once in a month, right? It could be a reporting application, and nobody would ever imagine that by looking at the database activity that it is actually relying on this database. So there are several scenarios that we did face in the past where we figured out that, oh, there is another application that the customer basically could not discover, because there is a team of or there are numerous teams or number of teams that are working across the company, and sometimes that design or the architecture of the application is something that we need to take a look at to begin with, right? So assessment, and then proceed with the POC. And also one thing while I also want to say is, if you are beginning your migration for the first time, right, and if Oracle PG is something that you want to try, right, you can just go to oraclepg.org, and you would be able to go to the official website of Oracle PG and look at the instructions and proceed with it. But at the same time, if you are more like a GUI user, you also have Exarocket, right, which can also simplify that journey by also giving live replication capabilities, right? Because that is something that can also simplify the POC as well as reduce a lot of amount of time that can be spent in migrations with code conversions, or especially building the kind of a different alternate layer to the dual write approach too, right? Like keeping both the systems in sync, a real-time sync in CDC. So yeah, but start with an assessment. Probably that's a simple answer.
Yeah, I mean, if I say simply, Ora to PG -T show underscore report hyphen estimate cost, right? That summarizes what Jills and Avi said. So if Commissioner sir, if you are still with us, I have one quick question to you to get your comment.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, cool. So, if a government's, I mean, if a state government CIO or SN government CIO is actually going to be watching this on a YouTube video, right? What is that one thing you would tell them as a final frontier?
The basic idea, I think, of this webinar is also that because MeeSeva, the volumes which we are handling and the database which we are handling, and now that we have completed migration successfully, in fact, we had opportunity to show this migration to the minister's office also last week. Because
Awesome.
in Telangana itself, MeeSeva being one major organization who does a lot of requirement of data, there are many other organizations who are still stuck with many of these licensing issues. And obviously, paying a huge amount is something which every government servant or every bureaucrat would think. Unless, of course, they some case studies, because having a theoretical approach that PostgreSQL exists and it is at a much less cost is one thing, but actually seeing something work in and around your neighborhood, in your own state, one of the IT departments doing it, that is what actually makes much more confidence building and much more importance given to this whole fact that that we could also take that leap of faith. Because like I mentioned, and I'm sure others also mentioned earlier, having that confidence is something which is very, very important, which comes only when you see a successful implementation. Although there would have been successful implementations elsewhere in the world, but maybe in the government this scale, perhaps this is one of its kind. So I'm sure whoever is watching this or whoever has been reached out through the various communication modes we are trying to, from our side, I can definitely assure that we'll be very happy to support them and share what we have done. And if there is something which we could help them in doing the same, definitely we are very, very much open to this. In fact, the whole idea of giving this presentation to the minister's office was that we will communicate this to the departments as well. Whoever is interested would take this up in a similar manner, which we have already submitted the document. Let us hope that it is kind of circulated well. But more than the government ecosystem, the social media, the LinkedIn and others are places where it can reach much more easier than on a piece of paper through government order, which we are trying. And I would actually also like to thank Gilles and Avi, who have already, I would say, mentioned this in their Hexa cluster page as well. That would add a lot of traction toward this whole work.
Thank you, sir. I mean, that's the end of the presentation. We will be, happy to have any questions that we can take. Are there any questions that are pending from our side that should be answered?
Okay, yeah. I think with respect to schema changes, so there are certain questions, right? So how do we handle these schema changes? So one of the things is that, especially when you are performing such kind of larger exogenous database migrations from Oracle to Postgres, it's important to have some kind of an understanding between the application teams and the executors of the migration, right? So in this case, it's, let's say, open source DB in this case, right? So what really happens is it's important that whenever there are any kind of, because any application, there could be faster sprints, it could be weekly sprints and bi-weekly, and you may be doing some kind of code changes or database schema changes. And in such cases, if the database schema is versioned and there is a version control that's maintained, please provide access to the executors of the migration. And also try to see how you can synchronize those changes to the target system also, because now you need to get used to performing those schema changes for Postgres as a target. So it's important to start that practice from the beginning. However, again, we try to also identify this requirement while we have embedded that into our commercial tool. But more than that, it is something that needs to be kind of a synergy between the application teams and the migration execution team, right? So it's important that the application teams start creating the changes also for Postgres as a target, because the migration has already started, right? So this is definitely one of the things that I can talk about. And I think with respect to yeah, of course, you can use Liquibase, you can use Flyway for the version control and executing the schema changes across multiple environments. So in addition to that, I might want to discuss the role of AI, right? So I think this is where I would also want to get some thoughts probably from Ravikiran Garu at the same time, as well as you, Hari. Maybe make it a kind of an interesting discussion, because now, 2.5 years ago, when we wanted to be more better in terms of using AI capabilities to perform these complex code objects conversion, because the major challenge when you're doing Oracle to Postgres migration is about migrating some of the business logic embedded as code inside the database. That code need to be migrated from Oracle to Postgres. So from that perspective, we started creating our own language model, right? We trained our own language model that executes that. And eventually we started noticing that the LLMs that are getting released, and day by day, LLMs are getting more better and better at domain-specific language translations. Or domain-specific LLMs are no longer required, because some of these LLMs, which are trained on large corpus of global data, are doing even better, right? So now I see that organizations, federal, healthcare, government started adopting large language models for code conversion. So is it something that Ravikiran Garu as well as Hari, like you see, what is how is AI considered now, or is government or some of these government agencies really attempting to use LLMs and AI at the core?
I'll let Ravikiran Garu take a stab at it first, and I am seeing a few things on Inside 2.2 that I can talk about.
Actually, I'm not so much technical, so maybe Hari, you should start. Maybe I'll just join in.
Sure. So, to your point, some of the government agencies, the AI inferences that the government is doing is like super awesome, I would say, right? We are working with the tax department, Indian tax department, as part of the Insight 2.0. When we looked at the RFP itself, the amount of AI inferences the RFP has asked the vendor to be, aware of, adhere to, and some of the nuances the Postgres partner has to bring to the table, it's just enormous, right? Look at PG vector, PG vector scale. How do I need to have a separate vector database on top of Postgres? These are some of the questions that were in the RFP. We were pleasantly surprised to look at. And yeah, the government is looking at AI very with a set of magnifying lens, I would say. And the best part is to bring a lot of that, intelligent data insights to the public, right? To the to the citizen, and then to change some of those citizen services, right? If we look at the PAN 2.0 application, or if we look at the Insights 2.0, right? If we look at some of the modernization the nationalized banks are going through, every one of them have a rock solid AI set of specifications in their RFP, right? That itself is a testament that the government agencies are very, very strict and very, very religiously thinking about how much of investment should I be putting on some of these AI pieces, right? How do I grab a lot of the intelligence out of the data that I already have in my systems for ages together, right? SPI, for that matter, came up with couple of RFPs. I guess they are not awarded yet, but when I look at the RFP, I get amazed, right? How much of detailing that they had gone through. I mean, they do work with a lot of consulting organizations like McKinsey's, right? The Ernst and Young's, and the consultants of the world, right? But it is at the end of the day, right? Citizen services, and then how the population gets impacted with all of this technology evolution. That is the icing on the cake for me as a technologist, I would say.
Yeah. One more thing to add is Hari, right? Like eventually, one of the things that can be promising, especially when I think Ravikiran Garu was mentioning about as an example, presenting this entire use case to ministry, right? So when you're also presenting this use case to ministry, or be it making this one of the examples for larger scale migrations within the entire government sector as well, right? I think one of the challenges that does come across is how do we handle the translation or the compatibility of some of the legacy applications that are built over a certain period of time, could be tens of years or decades of effort put into those applications. Can those applications work? Now, can we really make those applications work with Postgres? So what is the amount of effort involved in that? So maybe sometimes there may be also questions that could be coming back to the team who's actually proudly presenting this, like, okay, but this is not something that's possible for free. It involves some cost, it involves some effort, and it is risk-driven efforts, right? So I think this is where we really need to consider that. I think governments these days are talking about AI almost everywhere, right? So okay, we need to do AI adoption. So that translates to deeper into the technical mode of saying like the application conversions can actually leverage some of the AI capabilities to speed up, right? So you might want to leverage probably OpenAI models or Claude or some other models to really, ask AI to say like, okay, can you tell me what are the areas where I need to modify within the application to make it compatible to Postgres? So again, while I do not want to say that this is how you want to always do, right? But there is AI to support, and you also have to have certain guardrails so that you are protected, your code is protected, and the sensitive code is basically your data, right? So sometimes it's not just the data being data, but it's also the code being data, right? Which holds a lot of the business logic of government as well as other applications across different industries. So I think in this case, we have to really go through the guardrails that are set by the government or the organization about what are those trusted models that can be leveraged, right? At the same time, we've also done the best to build certain assessment tools that can scan the application code and also tell which part of the application needs to be modified, which part of the application needs to be adjusted to make it work with Postgres. So that is basically the DMAT, which Hari, you're also aware of, right? The database and application migration assessment tool. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we always need to propose some kind of a commercial alternative, right? I mean, everybody can get started. You also have open source tools. Of course, it involves some amount of effort that you have to put in. And if you want to go with some kind of a trusted and a kind of a simple way of doing it, probably you rely on some of the commercial tools, like I mentioned about HexaRocket. But technically, you have everything available around you. It's just about how you plug it. But when you execute at scale, you need to have a proper strategy, because now it's not about one migration that you might want to target. You might want to target larger number of migrations, right? Like migrating at scale. So this is something that can be achieved with the true capabilities of some of the commercial tooling out there and AI capabilities out there. So if you do not start now, then you're starting never, right? So it's important that you need to take, everybody needs to take these success stories as a stepping stone and really move forward in taking the tiny baby steps of assessments and leveraging probably open source DB and the partners that you see here, right? And probably Oracle PG and even HexaRocket, like commercial tools that can simplify this entire journey. And you have support from everywhere, and especially with Postgres community, you do not have people who are competing with each other, but it's about all of these companies that are working together to make it happen, right? I think this migration success can definitely be that stepping stone for a lot of upcoming migrations, I would say. Yeah, Hari.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Ravikiran sir, Avi and Jels, and everybody who joined us today on the webinar. I know we are at the top of the hour, and again, I take this opportunity to thank everybody who were involved in this migration project. This is definitely a journey for us, a great one. And thank you so much. So we will make sure the recording is available on YouTube. We will push it to YouTube and share the link with you all. And if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to us, to Ravikiran sir, Avi, Jils, myself. We will be super happy to pave a way for you if you are doing a migration. Yeah, great. That is Ravikiran sir's number 2.
Thank you so much. Firstly, let me thank Hari for organizing this. And of course, special thanks to Gilles and Avinash, who have been, although not part of the migration, but the reason for the whole success, I would say, and the whole open source community who have been kind of contributing in a big way in the last 2 decades, and I'm sure the contribution will continue further. I would say this is just one small effort from our side also to showcase how useful it is and how others can adopt it. I have put in my details. Anybody interested can reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and see you all later.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.